and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very, very high above all the insipid and puerile forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Jerry. Welcome to the program, my friends. It's Wednesday on Cowboy State Politics. I've got a different show for you today. At the top of the hour, we're going to talk to two guys, Kyle True and Nick Ellis, about their project called Christian Halls. So we'll do that at 9, and then there's a number of other things that have been happening to talk about. And one of those that I don't think that we've had that big of a discussion on is data centers. So I want to talk about that. And then, of course, we had another forum last night, and so we need to handicap that. And then a really fascinating article in Wyopile entitled, Will the Wyoming Freedom Caucus? I need some ominous music. Ken, do you have any ominous music that we can use?
I have tons of music, and how ominous it is kind of remains to be seen. But see, now I'm buying time to try to find the right button. You could give me a heads up once in a while.
Well, you know, these things just come to me.
I know.
I mean, that is one of the singular gifts of being a podcast radio type ish internet host. Is these things just come to you? It's and ideas.
If you hadn't asked me, I'd know right where the creepy music is. I know there's one on here, but
I've got this one. This one might.
Yeah.
That's kind of creepy. So here's the headline from Wyopile. Will the Wyoming Freedom Caucus win control of the Senate? Here are the races to watch. So there's that one to talk about, too.
I read that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Do you have any aspirations of taking over the Senate, Ken?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just a few of them?
Who wouldn't? That's what's so stupid about this.
Yes.
They want us to be satisfied with holding on to a few seats. And we say, no, we've got the public on our side. We've made great strides over the last few years.
Right.
Let's go as far as we can go with it.
Well, they're imperious. That's a fun word that we should incorporate more into the program.
No, you should incorporate it. I can't because I don't know what it means.
Imperious? Imperious.
No, I know.
Derivative of imperial, which means, here, we're going to give you the scraps and you should be happy with what we give you. As if the conservatives taking over the House of Representatives was anybody given to anybody.
I think you're mispronouncing it. I think it's more like in peril.
No, it's imperious.
Yeah, but if the Freedom Caucus is involved, there's got to be peril.
Peril. Great, great peril. But we begin this morning in the cow pie. Now, I guess I should begin this segment by saying credit where credit is due. The cow pie finally was able to print a political article that was just the facts. And I think they did a fantastic job. They, of course, being Claire McFarland. You see, Claire, I can give compliments when appropriate.
I would also say that's not the first one she's ever done.
Well, it's so few and far between that it's hard for me to keep, remember that far back. I mean, it may have been like the first or second article she wrote. Okay, that's probably not true. But the title of the piece...
Maybe Chuck's criticism got to her a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. Did you finally watch that thing?
No.
Well, you could probably only handle about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I have a life.
Hey, now. You spend part of your life with me almost every morning. From the Cowpie, how the Wyoming governor candidates handled questions from the Christian lobby. As if the anybody that has the name family in their title is the Christian lobby. The implication being, of course, that if you're an outfit that is not focused on the family or family values, then you are not Christian.
It's interesting that she didn't say Christian nationalist.
Yes. Well, that would be old Stubby, Susan Stubson, that would use that phraseology. But here we go. So the Wyoming Family Alliance held a forum in Cheyenne last night. And I guess before I get there, let me just explain this one. What is the difference between a forum and a debate? A forum is where candidates are just asked their opinion on a variety of different topics. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there's very little back and forth. And often what you get is a real lack of disagreement. And if you have any more than 3 candidates, what ends up happening is candidate number 4 says, yeah, what he said. And then the next guy, yeah, I totally agree with what all they said, and let me add. But you don't really learn anything from a forum. And secondarily, there are a lot of people that are just really averse to any sort of conflict or confrontation. And so, a lot of political groups try to sidestep that in favor of, well, let's just ask them some questions and see what they say. Now, a debate, on the other hand, is you being forced to defend your position. That is a back and forth, a battle of ideas. And, sometimes those get a little contentious, which I kind of like.
Very hard to have a back and forth with the left. It usually very shortly ends in name calling.
It does, yeah. A good example of that is a debate that I held in Buffalo in the last, be 4 years ago. And it was supposed to be Mark Gordon, Brent Bean, and Rex Rammel. And Rex, he went off the rails, and so... And
I'd forgotten about that
Ken
one.
stormed the stage, and it was something else.
I didn't storm the stage.
Well, approached the stage.
Yeah, Rex came out and said things that, in my view, impugned every veteran.
Yeah, he did. It's true.
And I was not going to stand for it.
Now,
so
the funny part...
He got some pushback.
He did get a little bit of pushback. The funny part, I thought the funniest part of it, was I had the local radio station broadcasting the thing live. And so Ken and I were sitting at the table. Ken's running the board, and I'm just kind of watching because I had the Buffalo High School Turning Point USA kids run the debate, which they did a fantastic job too. Well, the radio guy is sitting to my right, and this whole Rex Rammel thing blows up, and I lean over and I said, "Hey, I'm sorry for this. I know you're live." And he goes, No, man, this is pure radio gold. Which it was. So sometimes debates, they get a little bit out of hand, but hey, you got to have some excitement, I think. Keep the crowd energized. Have people make sure people are interested.
Happy to do my part.
Yes, you did your part in that debate. So anyway, had a forum in Cheyenne last night. Here's what the Cowpie says about it. Gubernatorial candidates Eric Barlow, Brent Bean. Barlow finally showed up because it was a forum. Had it been a debate, I question whether or not Eric Barlow would have shown up. But gubernatorial candidates Eric Barlow, Brent Bean, and Megan Felder fielded questions on Tuesday at a forum in Cheyenne before a largely Christian audience. How does the Cowpie know that it was largely a Christian audience? Maybe there was a bunch of people that just wanted to see all those candidates. I mean, was there a poll taken? Are you Christian or not? I mean, okay, so it's an assumption. Apparently,
nobody had blue hair.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a pretty good indication, generally. But an assumption being the only people that would pay attention to a forum sponsored by the Wyoming Family Alliance would be Christians. Anyway, policy differences emerged on abortion, university leadership, and library policy. Three of the Republicans hoping to become Wyoming's next governor answered questions on Tuesday. The Wyoming Family Alliance, an advocacy group that emphasizes biblical principles and Christian ideals, also hosted the U.S. House and U.S. Senate candidates at the forum. State Superintendent of Public Instruction Megan Felder, retired Colonel Brent Bean, and former State House Speaker no-show Eric Barlow, except for at the forum. Maybe we should just call him Desk Drawer Barlow. I've had that one thrown at me, too. Now, why desk drawer? Because that is the only place that you will find any sort of Republican values or pro-life agenda or any conservative bill is in his desk drawer.
Not according to him. Read his answers.
Well, yes, it's true. You read his answer, and he is the most conservative guy in the universe. Well. But the problem is, over his entire legislative career, he's voted with the Democrats in excess of 80% of the time. Sometimes as high as 85%, but that's according to evidence-based Wyoming. Let's see here. Bean spoke in bold tones, pulled from his past experiences in active duty in Baghdad and elsewhere, and called for Wyomingites at every level of government to wage war on evil and usher in the revival of good. I couldn't agree more, though I wonder, how much specificity he went into about the nature of the battle that we're facing. Because I do agree with him that this is a spiritual battle, that it is one of evil and good, or good versus evil. And the way that you can tell that, I think, is the amount of bullcrap that's flying around. Generally speaking, the folks on the evil side of things tend to lie a lot because the facts don't line up with their agenda, and most of those folks end up being on the political left in this country.
Just look at the last session. The last session is a budget session.
Yes.
Boring, supposedly.
Woo, not so much.
And yet, the amount of coverage that got, I've never seen anything like it.
It was pretty impressive, actually. And it didn't matter what article we published. And even if it was what we tried to do at the Open Range Record is just report the news. Everybody else was focused on the stupid check incident. And I just told our people, just write the news. And there would be some, largely benign bill that would be up for debate, and we'd write an article on it, and that thing would get thousands of views. I mean, it was pretty incredible. And we were able to uncover some things like a crooked land deal over in Fremont County that Lloyd Larson was in the middle of, and some other things. We published a great piece about Eric Barlow and his record on pro-life bills. So continuing with the piece, Degenfelder, assertive in tone, pointed to what she cast as her own strong Christian faith, her studies of the Bible, her wide roots, and work as superintendent. Barlow, the most conversational in tone, leaned on his work in the legislature, spoke of his faith in personal terms as a matter of daily living, and brought an edge of pragmatism to a highly idealistic debate. A rare policy difference between the three candidates surfaced when Winters asked the question about abortion, whether it ends a human life, and whether the candidates would support any exemptions to an abortion ban. All three candidates agreed that abortion ends a life, meaning, of course, that abortion is the taking of a human life. Of course, you never get Eric Barlow to admit on that one. Let's see here. Barlow said that in his heart, he would not want exceptions to an abortion ban, except possibly an exception to spare the life of a mother in a medical emergency. But he warned that the legislature gets messy when it's crafting laws. Here's the problem with that. In any abortion debate, you hear the three exceptions. You hear rape and incest, life of the mother, and then, well, I guess two major exceptions, really. Rape and incest and life of the mother. Well, the problem with the whole life of the mother question is that's not a question of abortion. That's a question of triage. A couple of items on there. First, it's very rare. Though I did know a person who died in childbirth. But it's actually pretty rare. If you look at the amount of babies that are born every year and compare that to the amount of women that die in childbirth, it's actually a pretty small number. But secondarily, it's not a question of abortion. when there's a medical emergency in a delivery room, the doctor doesn't sit there and say, gee, I wonder if I should abort this child. No. They look at it and say, which one of these people do I have the better chance of saving? And stabilize that one first, and then go to the next one. It's a question of triage. It's not a question of abortion. But the problem is when you look at Eric Barlow's record on pro-life bills, it's really not that good. Generally speaking, when he is in a position of leadership, he tends to put stuff in his drawer. Now, there's a great article on the Open Range Record about this. It was written by Dana Jennings, and we published it on March 10th of last year. But there's a real, a pretty specific detailing of what his votes are. So in 2013, this was one of the first abortion bills that he had a chance to vote on, and it was a version of the heartbeat bill. That is, if a child has a detectable heartbeat, then no abortions allowed. This is the same, almost the same legislation that we passed this session that is now again tied up in court. And then there was an ultrasound bill in 2015 that he voted against. And then it was in 2024, there was a bill about chemical abortion waste, and he voted against that one too. However, there are some bills that he voted in favor of. One was an ultrasound bill in 2017. In 2019, he voted in favor of a reporting of abortions bill. And then in 2022, this is the one that I want to get to. House Bill 98. Which was the abortion prohibition Supreme Court decision. This was the trigger bill. Now, he voted against it in committee, and then he voted for it on the floor. So with Eric Barlow, you just have to remember this one principle. When he's sure that his vote will be on the record, he votes for the legislation. When there's a possibility that he could hide his vote on an abortion bill, he votes against it. So when he was Speaker of the House or when he was the chairman of the committee, there were a lot of pro-life bills that never made it out of his drawer. And so just keep that in mind whenever the question of abortion and Eric Barlow show up in the same conversation. It's not nearly as clear-cut as he makes it out to be. But that's a great article, and I'll go ahead and let's see here. I think I can post this in the comments. So I'll post that piece in the comments, and you can go read it later. Let's see here. All three candidates agreed that abortion ends a life. Let's see here. Here's what Barlow said. Quote, I believe in life, and I voted multiple times for life in the Wyoming legislature. That's true. He did. But he also voted against a lot of pro-life bills. Some of the many abortion bans and restrictions Wyoming has tried to pass since 2022 contained exemptions, like abortion allowances for women who suffered rape or those who are product of incest. That's because the legislature, in collaboration between numerous people, Barlow said, quote, because in the legislative process, you actually have to bring people on board. You actually have to advance policy. Now, here is the part that I think that deserves a little bit of discussion, and perhaps Ken, you could weigh in on this. In the legislative process, you have to be cognizant of what I call the politics of possible. That is, in any given session, there's only so far that you can go given the amount of people that are there. And if you're in favor of a particular policy, it's not just abortion, but gun policy or pro-life policy, or even spending, you have to look at the makeup of the chamber. And while Ken and I would love to get rid of the Wyoming Business Council, there's a group of people in either chamber that are just not going to vote for that. And so perhaps the best outcome you could get in that one session would be to dial them back, would be to cut their budget, or on the question of abortion, or let's talk about guns first before we get back to the abortion question. So some sessions you may be able to pass a bill that allows constitutional carry in the state. And then perhaps the next session, but that's as far as you can go, is constitutional carry for residents. Well, then maybe the next session, the composition of the chamber changes a little bit, and maybe you can get constitutional carry for non-residents, which is what happened. And then maybe you can pass a a SEPA bill protecting, you know, the constitutional rights of all gun owners.
Or maybe that SEPA bill that you pass is going to have a couple of clauses in it that you really don't want. So then the idea is you whip the vote, you figure out where you're at, you get what you can, and you come back later and try to fix it. That's
And
what the left has done so well for so long.
Yeah, and what we're talking about is incrementalism.
Yeah.
Okay. So now Barlow says last night at the Wyoming Family Alliance Forum that he's totally in favor of doing away with all abortion. I don't believe that for a second. Not looking at his record. Maybe he's changed his feelings on it. I haven't spoken to the man, but it's possible he's changed his opinion.
He may. He did lean on the pragmatist idea, and not to divert it so far, but we've tried several things that have just wound up in courts, and that was a big warning. But there are other responses to that. So.
Right. So let's talk about the abortion question. You and I would be in favor of banning abortion outright, but there in no way is that probably going to pass the House of Representatives. I mean, we've come close, but in every bill there's those exceptions.
Yeah. Right now we currently don't quite have the votes to pull that off, especially I think in the Senate.
And
that's part of the factor is there have been a lot of times when we had bills this last session or in the first session of the 68th legislature, we knew we could get it by the House.
Yeah,
but it was true with property tax bills.
A lot of different things.
We didn't get everything or what we wanted in the property tax. We had to set it up as what are we going to be able to get all the way to the finish line.
Yeah, and I think a big question, and maybe I've heard you characterize it this way, but you should always be in favor of moving the ball down the field.
Yep.
Okay, you're not going to score a touchdown on every play.
Think of it in wrestling terms.
Okay.
In wrestling terms, wrestlers are constantly applying pressure at varying amounts because no human can put 100% pressure all the time. And so it becomes kind of a pushing back and forth. But you always have to, you never completely give up resistance unless you're going to try some sort of jiu-jitsu, let them pass through you and then come around the back. We have to constantly apply pressure. And one of the problems with the right is once we achieve a victory, we have a tendency to relax and celebrate and think we're done. They are relentless. They never stop.
No, the left never stops.
And we need to learn from that.
Yeah, exactly right. And the left is great at using incrementalism, and conservatives need to do that too. That you have to look at legislating as in long term. Over the long term. If you're the legislator that says, if I can't get everything that I want in this one bill, then I'm not going to do anything. Well, you're not going to advance policy whatsoever. What I'm saying is that in one session, you might be able to get part of what you want, and you might be able to get agreement on that, and you should take that as a win. And then perhaps the next session, you come back and fix it and continue on. But I think that Eric, and not to defend him too much, but he's right that, a lot of the abortion bans that we've passed, they were never going to pass constitutional muster. I shouldn't say constitutional muster. They weren't going to pass judicial muster.
Yeah, that's why we need judicial reform.
Yeah. So, so in that case, yep, you got to be able to eat the elephant a spoonful at a time and not try to swallow the whole thing, because you end up being the legislator like Anthony Bouchard, great example, right? Lots of bills he put through that were very well-meaning. I think he was correct on the policy, but he wanted everything all at one shot, and it never worked for him. So one bill it worked for him.
Yeah, Tom Kelly voted against what we all call the pro-life bill at one point, and it kind of raised a lot of eyebrows. And he made a very compelling argument on the other side that sometimes there's no room for compromise. I won't attempt to make his argument, but
Yeah, well, and
yeah, there are exceptions to every rule, but
well, I remember a pretty tense conversation between you and I, and it was I have to work with these people.
yeah.
And Ken's point was, hey, I may not agree with this guy, but maybe I can get him to
That's
go with me 50% of
I
the way.
think that might be the mistake that Anthony Bouchard made was he was so passionate about a few things that he kind of alienated himself.
Yeah.
And that is a true difficulty in legislating, is being able to compromise, which means everybody's going to be disappointed.
Yeah. And in many cases, I think that Anthony was right on principle. Maybe the approach he took needed a little bit of work because he ended up not being able to get a lot of those things through. Okay, so another thing they talked about last night was University of Wyoming. It's run by the president and the board of trustees, and right now the governor appoints the trustees on the board. Whether you realize it or not, the governor in Wyoming has an extraordinary amount of power. Everything from the judiciary to the university to all of these boards, Game and Fish Board, Oil and Gas Commission. I mean, there are a lot of things that the governor has his fingers in.
The executive branch, if you look at it this way, the executive branch works every day.
Yes.
All day long, full time, and then some. The judiciary works all day, every day, full time, and then some. Legislature's part time.
Mm-hmm.
And that has repercussions. Now, I'm not advocating that the legislature go full time, but we are already at a disadvantage. And then when we do things like, say, such and such an agency shall promulgate rules, we're basically of necessity a lot of times advocating our responsibility, our job, and ceding it back to the executive. And that's why I support things like an elected attorney general, is it starts to whittle away or knock down some of that power of the executive.
Yeah. Well, and one of those is the university. Wyoming only as you all know, Wyoming only has one university, and the governor appoints the trustees. And so if you want to be on that board, well, you kind of got to be in line with the governor's thinking. And what that has resulted in is a very, very liberal board of trustees. And it is amazing how the stories I've heard of what's happened inside board of trustees meetings.
The governor, because he has to get elected, can't make a lot of these policy changes, but he can appoint people to various positions that will. And that's one of the issues that we have there is we have an executive that is far more liberal than most people realize, and the things that they do behind the scenes to enhance the swamp.
And so
people wouldn't like.
No, and so there's been a big question for quite a while about should we elect the board of trustees to the university? I think we should. Absolutely.
At least a portion of them, and give some of the voice back to the people.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I honestly don't know in this case how many, if any, are approved by the Senate, but that would be a step in the right direction.
Well, maybe a few of them are.
Yeah, I'm obviously not certain. So if somebody knows, let us know.
Yeah, but anyway, if you know the answer to that, Kyle True might know the answer to that when
he might
comes in to join us. All right, so let's go ahead and take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to talk data centers. Ken and I haven't kicked that football around, so we'll do that when we come back. Stay with us. Kyle True and Nick Ellis are going to join us at the top of the hour. Back in a minute. I know that you think it's spring and that the weather is just going to continue to warm up and you don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia.
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland. France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is expanding faster than, well, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to measure it, really. 60,000 views every month and growing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching the program. Stick with me till, to the top of the hour. We're going to have Kyle True and Nick Ellis in. We're going to talk about Christian Halls. It's a new venture they're involved in, and I think you'll find it pretty interesting.
It is pretty exciting. It just to give you a little taste. What if homeschooling went all the way through graduate school?
Yeah, crazy, huh? And the Valor Academy here in Sheridan. Okay, it's a private school, and they just had their very first graduation. So students that have been in there 4 years, they just had their first full graduation. Really exciting.
We really need to get Al on here. Al Sparkman is the principal there, a friend of mine, and I think it'd be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot that's happening in education, and it's I think that homeschooling gets a bad rap. I know that homeschooling gets a bad rap because the education lobby in this state is so powerful that, well, if you do anything that's outside of public education, well, it's automatically bad. Well, that's not true at all. Most of the people that set up this country were largely self-educated. I know a lot of people that don't have a college degree that educated themselves. And I'm Agent 29, but there's no reason why you can't pick up a book and teach your kids. In fact, I think that's what you should be doing. We put way too much emphasis in that piece of paper.
Or even more importantly, I think the goal of a lot of homeschooling is to create a curiosity and teach somebody how to go find what you want to know.
Yeah.
You create a passion for learning and get it started and then get out of the way.
Yeah, and you just let them go.
That's what my dad did for me. He had a couple of master's degrees and a PhD, and he knew that I had interests, and he said, these are things you ought to look at. And, it's good to have some guidance in there because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And
okay, so let's talk about something that maybe we don't know about. from the Turkey Vulture. Governor Gordon signs executive order. Okay, that should be a red flag anytime you hear that phrase. Executive order addressing data centers in Wyoming. And not surprisingly, he says we got to do it the Wyoming way. Okay, we really don't know what that is.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, it means if there was a Indiana cure for cancer, some of these people would say we can't use the Indiana cure for cancer. We have to have it the Wyoming way.
And the last Minerals and Corporations meeting was a great example of this. They were talking about the Wyoming Business Council and what we're going to do with that. And the very first thing they did was let's look at every state around us and see what they're doing and what works and what doesn't.
No, that can't happen. We have to do it. Wyoming solutions for
Wyoming way.
All right, from the Turkey Vulture. The executive order signed by Gordon creates a Wyoming data center development framework. I don't know why he has the power to do that. That seems like a legislative job. But anyway, a set of guiding principles intended to ensure that the state remains a destination for data center investment while shielding citizens from unintended environmental and financial costs. The framework prioritizes 8 key pillars: water sustainability, wildlife stewardship, transparency, energy grid protection, revenue-driven growth, workforce development, and community investment. Now, I would first question, why is any of that the job of government? I don't think that it is. I think that we should let business operate as a business. Now, I talked about this Monday on the podcast, and my point was, as Republicans, we should be in favor of business, right? We should, if somebody's got an idea and they want to hang a shingle outside their door and provide a service or provide a product, government shouldn't have any place in it. And if it's a data center you want to open up and you've jumped through all the hoops, that is, you've got it all permitted, whatever water issues you have, you've settled those. Perhaps you've bought water rights or you've paid somebody to use their water rights, however that works out, and you're not getting subsidies. And frankly, we should just do away with subsidies. But if all of those things are happening, there's no reason why government needs to get involved. If you're doing all of the things, following all the laws, and you're not getting subsidies, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that government needs to be involved.
I would say government's already done its role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is to create an even playing field.
That is the only job of government, is to create an even playing field, keep taxes low, and you just let it happen. And I am really hesitant to suggest that we need to, we need to get pass laws or pass regulations. I think we just need to enforce the laws that we have. Get government out of the middle of it, make them stop picking winners and losers, and let the process just play out. Now let me address 2 things, and I talked about this in Monday's podcast, but the first one is water. Well, in Wyoming, you have to have water rights. And if you purchase those water rights, how does the state have any authority whatsoever to tell you what you can do with the water that you've purchased? They don't. I mean, it is not the role of the state, even though water rights are in the Constitution. Or if you've paid somebody else to use their water, I see those things as the same. Now, riddle me this, riddle me that. What other pieces of equipment do you have that are cooled by water? Well, we all drive around in one just about every single day. There are water-cooled computers already. They're kind of expensive, but if you want to buy a liquid-cooled computer, you can buy that. And so it doesn't make any, and I think that there's this big misconception about data centers, that it's just this constant flow of water going in and steam coming out, and that's it. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Most data centers, from what I've read, operate on what they call a closed-loop system. That, yes, the equipment is water-cooled.
What your internal combustion engine vehicle does.
There you go. That's exactly what it is. And liquid-cooled computers.
Well, mine doesn't.
Yours leaks it out.
It leaks.
You have to keep pouring it in. But that's essentially what it is. And a data center is nothing more than a big, giant computer. That's all that it is. And so I don't see water as that big of an issue. If you're paying for it, if you've got all that taken care of, government needs to stay the heck out of the way. Now, what about power? This is another concern I've heard, and in fact, in this Turkey Vulture article, it brings it up. Data centers require a lot of juice. So, but electricity is one of those things that if you have a power plant or like a coal-fired power plant, and as long as you've got fuel for that coal-fired power plant, there's no end to the electricity that you can generate. And so why would it be such a bad thing if we had to turn on the other generators at Dave Johnston Power Plant? I've had several legislators tell me that not all of the 5 generators at Dave Johnston are running, that there's only 1 or 2 of them that's going. And that still provides way more power than the entire state of Wyoming uses. Most of the power that we generate is exported out of the state to California, Arizona, other places. Why would it be such a bad thing if we had to flip the on switch to those other 3 generators, or at Jim Bridger or any of the other power plants? Seems to me that would be a good thing, that if you could sell electricity in the state instead of exporting it out, that seems to be a net positive for me. And secondly, are we not the state that produces power? Is that not our big thing, right? We mine coal, we mine natural gas. I mean, that's kind of the big deal, right?
Dare I say it, nuclear power?
Yeah, sure, nuclear power.
Yeah.
And there's another one too. While we might have some concerns about what Bill Gates's ultimate plans are, if he's jumped through all the hoops and got all the permitting, why should government stand in the way? Now, I would draw the line there at storing nuclear waste in the state. I don't like that idea. But other than that, I mean, we have got to get out of this habit of getting government involved in private business, because we do it with all manner of businesses. We mentioned the Wyoming Business Council earlier. I mean, there are people in the legislature that think that the state needs to be involved in everything. And that's just wrong-headed. And if you want to know why, a lot of communities in the state have a problem with keeping businesses. Well, a lot of that is regulation and taxes. And so, I mean, if you look at the list of industries in Wyoming, number 1 is government. It's bigger than the coal extractive industries. It's bigger than the coal industry. It's bigger than anything else. The number 1 industry in Wyoming is government. And it just makes sense that if you reduce the amount of government, you're going to those folks are going to have to find employment elsewhere. And so I really don't have a problem with data centers. In fact, I think that's a heck of a boon to a community's economy. Now, I have some question about how many of them are popping up, but again, hey, I mean, if they follow the rules, there's no reason why they shouldn't be allowed to operate. What do you think, Ken?
Well, as y'all know, I just got back from D.C. and we had a chance to sit down with some cabinet makers. Yeah, but we had a chance to sit down with some cabinet members, and they discussed some of the plans. And there are some remarkable things that can be done with data centers actually adding income to the area. There are examples of data centers being able to lower the electrical cost to everyone else. There are some parameters that obviously need to be monitored and make sure that this happens that way. But there are a lot of good things that are there. But one of the interesting things that I did was went over and we sat in the Senate for a couple of days, or a couple of hours. It felt like a couple of days. And we listened to, among others, Bernie Sanders. And he got up and he proposed that what we do at these data centers is confiscate half of the profit. He wants to put a 50% tax on everything that they do. He started out, it was interesting, he started out talking about all the fears that people have of AI and data centers. And, I looked at the people sitting next to me and said, for once, I think in some ways I kind of agree with him. But of course, his answer wasn't to address those fears. His answer was, just tax the living crap out of it, and then take all of that money and dump it into a sovereign wealth fund that gets shared by the people. Well, what he means by the people, which is government.
You're right.
So
Right.
there are a lot of pitfalls along the way, but like any other business, give it a chance to compete. If it competes on the open market and is productive, so be it.
Okay. Yes, I think that you're absolutely right. Two questions in the comments. What about the uninvited invasion of privacy? All right. So I've heard a lot of people say, well, maybe these data centers are used for surveillance. Okay. That's probably Susan's question. Maybe it is, to advance AI. I mean, there's all sorts of questions, but those are ancillary to actually setting up the business. Okay. So if you follow the law, if you get it permitted properly, if you are not getting government subsidies, then the question of what you're going to do with your business is a concern that is outside the realm of government.
Yeah.
Now, I will admit that I wonder what the heck you need all these data centers for. I don't quite understand it, but I think that that's a secondary concern to the role of government.
I would make a parallel of that in saying, what about the firearms industry? There are those that would sit on the other side. Why do we need more guns?
Yeah.
Don't we have enough guns? That's not really government's decision to decide when's enough. Business does that with supply and demand.
Yes.
That's how that works.
Now, another concern that I've heard is, well, they're going to set up all these things and they're going to create all these jobs and then they're just going to leave. Well, that's kind of the nature of how things work in Wyoming. There's if we're going to set up a big power plant, it takes a tremendous amount of people to build a power plant, and they're going to hire a whole bunch of people. And then once it's built, well, then you don't need the 300 or 400 or 500 people anymore. I mean, it's temporary employment. I don't see that as a problem either. If somebody wants to come to Sheridan and set up a data center out in the middle of the sagebrush, I don't care. They're going to hire 300 or 400 people to build it, and people are going to make a heck of a lot of money. And when it's built, well, then they can go on to the next construction project.
Yeah, consider this. You have one of these things come in and they hire tradesmen, electricians, plumbers, whatever. Some guy goes there and he works for 2 or 3 years. He gets to where he can become a journeyman, and he might step out on his own and create his own plumbing business from that. There are a lot of good things can come out of that.
I agree. But I think that the concerns of, what are they going to do with the data center? I think those are ancillary to the actual setting up the business and what the proper role of government should be. Now, what about cronyism? There's another good one.
Kickbacks. I got to decide what to do with all my kickbacks.
Yeah. Have you got your $30,000 check from the Freedom Caucus yet?
No.
No? Okay.
But that's a very real problem because there are those that do.
Okay, so there are a lot of communities that have been signing non-disclosure agreements with different businesses. I think that's wrong. I mean, there are no non-disclosure agreements in government, or there ought not to be.
Yeah, if you're in government, and of course most of these non-disclosures, like the one in Cheyenne with the Cowboy Hall of Fame.
Sure.
When they wanted to move up here, they didn't want it to get out that to Colorado Springs or to Colorado that they were considering leaving. They wanted to, okay.
Whatever.
But if you involve government, all the cards should always be on the table.
Yes. So I think that there is a valid concern of palms getting greased. Hey, if I pay you this amount of money, will you vote this way to allow this zoning change or whatever? I mean, that's wrong. I mean, that is wrong in so many ways. If somebody wants to set up a business, they need to do that within the bounds of the law. And that's bribery. It's in our Constitution a couple of different times.
That's why voting in people with character is so important, because you are given a position where you could go and do certain things like that, and people of character don't do that.
Right. And that's why, I think that's an excellent point, Ken. Of course it is. You made it. But, elections are so important is simply because of that. Like, you have to have people of character that are not going to be swayed by, somebody walking in with a big bucket of money. But I think that danger exists with every industry. It doesn't matter if it's a data center or a sawmill. A kickback, a bribe. All those things are wrong. And if we find them, we should prosecute them in every case. And, I mean, and if you are personally involved in these things, if you have a construction company and maybe you might get hired for this data center, you need to recuse yourself
What
from
if you
that
own
vote.
a data center and you run for election?
Okay, there's another one. Okay, so what is it? Lee Filer? Does he? No, he doesn't own a data center. He's involved in crypto mining. But when those votes come up, you need to recuse yourself. You shouldn't be voting on those things. And similarly, if you're a school administrator, you shouldn't be voting on things that involve the school. The problem is that in Wyoming, we have such loose laws about conflicted votes, and I don't know how you police those. But our disclosure laws of our public officials are really, really weak. Legislators fill out this little form that, I mean, really, it's nothing more than a formality. I mean, I've read a lot of them that are so vague, and I mean, the legislator filled out the form. They followed the rules. And even though they have all sorts of different ties, that's not on there.
That form just says what forms of income do you have? Where do you make money from?
Yeah, that's it. But I mean, really, but all of those things that we would consider to be malfeasance, bribery, and a kickback is a form of bribery, but all those things are illegal, and they ought to be, and we ought to prosecute them. And if you're going to set up a business, no matter what it is, you should play by the rules. Let me give you an example. The hair salon, the lovely Christine's salon. It took us a month to get the city of Sheridan to even give us a building permit. A month. It wasn't until I went to the city and threw a holy fit that we actually got that happening.
Yeah, and that building permit, we should say, it wasn't like you were going in and substantially changing the structure
we were
whatsoever.
Building a couple of fake
basically,
walls.
Yeah, basically what you did was go in and set things there that are independent. You could take them back out of there and not affect the building whatsoever.
Yeah.
For the very most part. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I say we need to deregulate. We need to back off. And yes, we need safety. We need to make sure somebody's not going to do something stupid that's going to ruin the building next to them or cause a fire, and that.
But in that project that you and I worked on, Ken,
yeah.
I mean, getting the building permit was ridiculous. But all of the inspections that happened later, the one that blew my mind was they had to come in and inspect the screws in the sheetrock.
Yeah.
How many screws did you put in to hold this piece of sheetrock up? And the guy walked in and he looked at one wall and he said, "You guys are good," and then he left. But we couldn't continue with taping the sheetrock until he showed up.
And it's not really about did you follow all the rules perfectly.
No.
It's about did you pay permit fees?
Yes. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. So we need to get, when I say we need to get government out of the way, it's you reduce the amount of regulations and you only regulate those things that are absolutely necessary. We don't want a company dumping noxious chemicals into the Platte River or to Goose Creek or whatever. I mean, we don't want that, obviously. We don't want an oil driller to do a substandard job of casing a well and it's going to blow out later.
We don't want truckers hiring people that don't understand English and can't read a sign.
Okay, there you go. Another good one. But beyond those things, creating mountains and mountains and mountains of paperwork, creating an overburdensome inspection process, all of those things need to go away. Government, the only place that government has in business is to keep taxes low and to keep regulations to the bare minimum. That's it.
Yeah, one more facet of that is if you do have a law, a rule, a regulation, it needs to be enforced.
Yes.
That's part of what's frustrating is sometimes they're enforced, sometimes maybe they're just overlooked and forgotten. Depends on who you know, depends on how big a hurry the inspector's in, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly right.
And that depreciates the force of law.
Yeah, and if you want to know why business isn't cropping up as fast as you think it should, the very first place you should look is your local government. Ken, you're on the what is it, the Board of Adjustments?
Yeah.
I mean, and you've told me stories about how a guy just wants to fix his property, and it's this huge ordeal.
It can be. On the other hand, there are people that say, I want to do something here, but I want to skirt the law because I don't want to pay certain fees, and so I'm not going to tell anybody about it, and I'm just going to go start building and hope I can get away with it.
Yeah, that's not right.
That's one of the problems of over-regulation is you get people then trying to skirt it. And the same principle goes for taxation. If you lower taxes and they're really pretty low, people are pretty much glad to just go ahead and comply.
Yeah.
But when they get to be prohibitive, then people start looking for ways to get around them.
Yes.
And that's the same principle.
Same thing, man. Keep government small. That's its only job. And until you elect legislators, city councilmen, county commissioners that understand what the proper role of government is, we really don't have any place complaining about the regulations that they impose, because we're the ones that are responsible for it. If you got a crappy legislator, guess who's to blame? You are, because it's us that elect him. And if we've got a bad legislator, well, then maybe we didn't do enough work in getting the other guy elected.
It's intimidating. We were talking about, exceptions to the abortion.
Yeah.
And we would not want to have any. I see the same thing when it comes to business and working, for example, with the Wyoming Business Council. I don't believe in grants whatsoever. It should not be seizing money forcibly from one portion of the population and then by your own decision giving it to somebody else, picking winners and losers. What it is, it's morally and ethically wrong. Okay, so that's grants. We shouldn't do grants. Well, what about loans?
I was just going to say, what about loans?
Well, I agree. We should not be in the banking business. That's going to end up being one of those compromises. And we made it several times last one. We tried to cut grants to say, okay, well, you can have a low interest loan. Part of the problem with loans is now you're competing with the banking business.
Yes.
And usually the ones we're asked to give loans to are businesses that have had trouble talking banks into giving them a loan.
And why do banks have a problem giving them money?
Yeah, because the business plan maybe has some problems in it that need to be worked out. So the state then takes that risk and puts it up there, and the taxpayers get screwed. I can show you examples all over the state.
Lots of them.
Where we have made loans, or even worse, grants, without purposely vetting, like you would if it was your own money, these organizations, and we get into trouble.
Well, you know what the solution to that is, though? Like, instead of government taking your money and loaning it to somebody that you wouldn't give money to, government needs to get the heck out of the way and make it easier for private enterprise to loan money. There are a ton of people that are venture capitalists that they have a lot of money, and instead of giving it to the government, they would much rather say, let me give you a low interest loan and let's get your business, on its feet. There's no reason why government needs to be involved.
Yeah, I look at, being a venture capitalist. Well, I don't have any money, but I do know one thing. I know how to make a small fortune. Yeah. You start with a large fortune.
You're pretty good at that, are you?
I haven't really been given the opportunity to try that, but in theory, on paper, it works.
It works pretty good on paper. But see, that's the whole point, man. If you get government out of the way and let the private sector run, evaporate.
Yeah, and of course, the issue that always comes up, well, look, the free market doesn't exist, and they said that again the other day. The free market doesn't exist. All the other states are doing it.
Horse crap.
Yeah. All the other states are doing it. Well, like your mom said, if all the kids are out there jumping off the cliff, are you going to?
Yeah. Are you going to jump off the cliff too? Dummy.
At some point. And I do not want to see Wyoming become like the Front Range of Colorado.
No.
So all the things that they've done to quote unquote be successful, or Utah, we often point to Utah. Look how successful they've been. Hey, if you want things done that way, move to Utah.
Yeah. And I mean, the question is, should all of these businesses or communities be propped up? And if you travel the state, you're going to find a whole bunch of small towns that have pretty much dried up. And that should the state come in and say, hey, nobody wants to live here, so let's dump a bunch of money in and keep people there? Well, no, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you just touched on something. There is a realtor in Casper, and her name is Collins, And she has a number of videos on YouTube, and they're actually very good. And she talks about the out-migration of Wyoming and what's behind it. And she also talks about the people that, after a few years, many of them come back. Well, we don't hear about those.
No, we never hear about
and
that.
She talks about the reasons they leave. And one of them is, I'm just done. A lot of people get to Wyoming, think it's going to be great. They go through a winter or two, say, I'm just done.
Yep, and they go.
And I'm okay with that.
Well, me too. And the last person I heard make a pretty good argument is Andrew Byron. And I couldn't believe it, but he said, maybe it's a good thing that our kids go experience life elsewhere and then realize how good we have it.
It was good for me. The military took me all over the world, and when I finally had an opportunity,
when you had enough
to come home, that's exactly what I did. And I came home a little bit smarter. I came home a little bit better to understand why it's bad to do the things they did in Colorado, because I experienced them.
All right, so let's take a quick break, and when we come back, hopefully we'll have Kyle True and Nick Ellis. Back in a minute.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
One of those speakers at the Salt Lake City event will be yours truly. That's right, my friends. I'm one of the keynote speakers at the JBS 2026 conference. So join me in Salt Lake City if you want to see me. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
You won't find him leading a horse out of a barn or leaning against a corral with the sun setting behind him, because Wyomingites don't need a candidate who creates a good photo op. What you will find is a hard-working, experienced leader who believes Wyoming should always come first. A conservative grounded in strong values and steady principles. Ready to lead Wyoming the right way. Brent Bean for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The 2 guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Wednesday. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. It's a tremendous responsibility.
Whatever.
Yeah, well, you can debate it all you want. But it's true, my friends. Welcome back to the program. I'm joined in the studio by Kyle True and Nick Ellis. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Well, I'll give you the treatment that everybody gets on this show. First, why don't you just take a minute or two and tell my audience about yourself? Nick, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Well, mom and dad, they were kind of a Montana family before we moved to Brazil. We grew up in the mission field. And then I got into education. And so we've got started kind of the homeschool and classical school movement in Brazil.
Okay,
so we
very
were
cool.
Trying to fight back against the Marxists and the leftists in the Brazilian context. That's now become over 700 learning communities all across Brazil, and it's kind of created a grassroots homegrown movement to fight against the left in South America. And so then we got interested in what would it take to do similar kind of stuff in North America, given where we're at in education. So in education, got 5 kids. We live in West Texas and Midland, and I spend my time in a little Cessna 182 flying all over the U.S. Landed in 121 small towns last year, and kind of a de Tocquevillian vision of what does it take to renew America town by town, place by place.
So is it easier to open up a homeschool, classical school here or in Brazil?
Well, politically, it's terrible there. We got families getting thrown in jail and whatever.
Marxist.
But in terms of growth, they've seen the devastation of 60 years of Marxist policies, and now families are like, we're done.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about Brazil is the Marxists are a little bit more out in the open.
Yeah,
here they hide a little bit.
That's right.
So Kyle, why don't you tell my audience about yourself?
Okay. I know this is going to drive you crazy, but I'll start by saying I think I'm a 7th generation Wyoming person, which does not make my opinion any more valid than anybody else's. But my mom's family came here before Wyoming was a state. Dan Spees, who donated some land to the state for the Dan Spees Fish Hatchery, was my great-great-grandpa. So I grew up in Wyoming. My goal in life was to find a wife who would agree to live in Wyoming and to stay here for the rest of our life.
What you really mean is find a wife that would agree to live with you.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. Yes.
That's my case.
That's right.
So I am involved in a little bit of business, a little bit of politics, a little bit of ministry. My wife and I have 7 kids. We've homeschooled all of them. We have 1 year left. We have a senior in high school coming, our youngest. We now have some grandkids. Won't get into all that. But my point is I hope that 50 years from now, this state is stronger than it is today. And if there are things that I can do and be a part of, and movements I can be a part of, to help foundationally so this state is strong decades from now, that's what motivates me. And so meeting Nick, I get very excited about Christian Halls because I think this will help do that.
Okay, well, let's just hit the nail on the head there. What is Christian Halls?
So Christian Halls is a alternative college program that really focuses from high school dual credit all the way through bachelor's, master's, PhD, and now we're starting to move into skilled trades. And it was created by us looking at local communities and saying, what are the things that are damaging the sustainability of healthy communities and healthy families?
Would you like a list?
There's a bunch of them, but one of them is a tendency for the universities to pull all of the talent out and have no mechanism to actually serve local communities. And I came out of the educational industrial complex, as I like to call it, went Oxford, then Cambridge, got my doctorate from the University of Oxford, thought, hey, the universities are going to be this magical, dreamy place.
Well, they're magical, all right.
Magic fairies, trying to spin up ideas that are going to solve our problems. And actually, they are synthetic, fake places that don't actually know how to create flourishing in local communities. And so we looked at that and we said, what would it look like to go back to a model of education that prioritizes the health of local communities? And so we went to a bunch of different universities, mainly Christian universities. We've got West Texas A&M, we've got Tarleton State, because we needed some technical programs like oil and gas engineering and equine science and some of those kind of things. And we basically told them, if you will allow us to use and license your degree programs, hire conservative faculty that love our people, we will go in town by town, community by community, and we will start local apprenticeship style education programs for the good of this place. And then we started to look at, well, what are kind of the sectors that we want to impact? And there's these archetypes in my mind. You've got to have your parsons and your preachers and your priests. You've got to have your teachers, your lawyers, your bankers, your craftsmen, your tradesmen, your cops. Like, these are the kinds of things that we should be training. So, and we should be training in a way that we're training civic leaders that love their community. Why am I pulling my best and my brightest civic leaders out of my communities, sending them to whichever capital, Austin in Texas, or wherever, and expecting that they're actually going to return and love their place?
Well, a friend of mine, actually a sponsor of my show, he often says that if you send your kids to Caesar, you shouldn't be surprised when they come out Romans.
That's right. That's right.
And it's, I mean, I visited a lot of universities, and very few of them, in fact, well, there's only been one of them, I think, that really focuses on the original intent of a university. And I just this past weekend went to a conference in Salt Lake, and one of the speakers, he's a historian, and he went through several different several of our major educational institutions, education in quotation marks, and he started with Harvard. And the original intent of Harvard was to foster the teachings of Jesus. Now, I think if you compare that version of Harvard to what we have now, I mean, it's two very, very different things.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the challenge is that there's this mass centralization. You start with your Oxford and your Cambridges in the British tradition, the Anglo-Saxon tradition, and you primarily have all of these localized abbeys and monasteries that are really embedded in their community. You've got a couple universities for research and that kind of stuff, but really the educational movement that gave us the Magna Carta, that gave us self-governance, that gave us English common law, that was deeply localized and embedded in communities. Then you come to the States, and you basically replicate that with Harvard. Like, it's here for the young men of Boston, right? Well, then you start to see massive westward expansion, and the Industrial Revolution hits. And so instead of forming the young men and young women for their communities, now it becomes mass industrial education that we've got to prepare a large-scale workforce and push them through a cattle chute of formation, and the whole thing goes to pot. And so suddenly, instead of a tutor in Oxford or a small cohort of students studying together and being formed and shaped, 5, 6, 7 people in a community, now you got 700 people in an English freshman class, and the whole thing just shifts substantially. So we looked at that and we just said, what would it look like if, as a civilization, as an American civilization, we said, how do we train and form people for the good of these places? And our universities can serve our communities instead of us serving our institutions, because that's basically what it's become. Our universities have become the largest grifting center of funds, tax, revenues, all this other kind of stuff, and they just no longer serve our communities. They don't know how to. So Christian Halls was designed to go play that role. We would love to see, if you're a local classical school or you're a homeschool group, you're reading through the great books and the great texts and all this other stuff, and at the same time, you've never sent a single one of your kids into civic leadership for your town, something's broken. And in fact, even worse, you validate your choice as a homeschool parent or as a classical school headmaster by how many people you sent away to a university. Something's also broken, because your honor-shame paradigm is broken. You've said, oh, I'm a good homeschool parent, I'm a good classical school headmaster because the state universities now validate my choice.
Right.
Instead of saying, actually, I'm validated by the way that my family and my community flourish as a result of our choices. That's the kind of reordering of the affections that we're trying to create with Christian Halls.
No, it seems to me like if you're the homeschool family and you take your kids all the way through their senior year of high school, I mean, the reason you did that is you don't agree with the paradigm of the public school, right? So you're going to teach them a different way.
Right.
And then we say, all right, off to the University of Wyoming you go. What's going to happen is the university is going to undo everything that you did. And I mean, it's the exact opposite of the reason why you homeschooled your kids in the first place.
That's right. That's right. And so, and the other, it's not just the ideology. Yes, that's a problem. It's not just the liberalism. Yes, that's a problem. It's a fundamental structuring or a restructuring of what are we going to do with our kids and why are we raising our kids? And if it's not primarily because we want a great place, we want a great family, we want a great community, then something is off. And so as a result, what we now have is we have 12 different universities that we have all of their degree granting authority.
Cool.
At about 500 degrees from high school dual credit, bachelor's, master's, PhD, and now skilled trades. And we're saying you can have all of these programs if you have a local mentor, a tutor in your community.
Cool.
And so it's forcing human engagement at the local level. And if you don't have that person, then we won't come in with that program. We've got a great aviation program. Well, what do you need to have a great aviation program? You have a flight instructor.
Yeah.
You got to have a human.
To fly Nick Ellis all over the country. That's
got to have a flight instructor, right? And so we are force ranking human formation in the post-secondary space for the good of local places. And so then I go all over the country, and what's challenging about it, I show up in the Rio Grande Valley, down in McAllen, Texas, and 1,000 homeschool moms show up from the valley at City Hall. Hispanic, Catholic, they love the valley, and they're sick of all their kids leaving. And if they come back from A&M, UT, or Tech, they're broken.
Yes.
And so they came to me and they said, we have the memory of the old Spanish missions.
You have a memory of a memory.
We have the shadow of a memory of the old Spanish missions, and we would like to retake self-governance for the formation of our people for the valley. Can you help us? Of course, the first thing they said is, can you move here? I was like, that's not going to work.
Yeah,
It's not going to work. You have to self-govern. We can train you. We can show you how to build this stuff. We can broker programs. That's all great. But this has got to be a self-governing program. Well, that community in the Rio Grande Valley is not the same demographic, religion, culture as our program partners at the UP of Michigan, right? Or Central Nebraska. Now we're talking Mennonite,
sure,
Lutheran, Catholic, Central European, agricultural, Midwest. And so a lot of what I do is coming into local places and saying, where are your leaders? Where are your tutors? Where are your mentors? Are you willing to take back self-governance, the formation of your people past 12th grade? What's really interesting about the American story is, we're all over the world, Brazil and Eastern Europe and Africa and whatever. We're actually like the only country that has successfully taken back K through 12 education. Like we're not able to homeschool
right
in the 70s and 80s, right? And the families basically flexed, and they were like, you know what? Yes, we can. We're going to take this back. And we fought those battles, and we basically won. Like we have wide-scale, nationwide self-governance in you want to go to homeschool? Awesome. Do you want to go to a classical school? Fine.
Cool.
You want to send your kids to a public school? Fine. These are all options. I think we're the only country in the world that's ever actually fully taken back that space. The challenge is that the post-secondary leftists say, we don't really care.
Yes.
Because we're going to get them anyway at 18 or 19. We're going to pull them out of your family. We're going to re-assimilate them back into a modernist, progressive mindset. And so do what you want. Just send them to us.
And one of the... And maybe we fixed this. Ken, maybe you can weigh in on this. But for a long time at the University of Wyoming, high school senior, graduate school, apply to go to the university, and the very first thing that they're subjected to was this program they euphemistically called Saddle Up. And Saddle Up was, it was to introduce your children to all manner of... just every bad thing that you could possibly imagine that would happen at a university, it was in that program. Highly sexualized programs, encouragement to have, multiple sexual partners and of varied, genders. And
it was like saying to the kids, hey, you're finally out from under Dad's thumb.
Yeah.
Look at all the world is available to you.
Yeah, and it very much it was like a shock and awe.
Yeah.
Right? You show up and you've been homeschooled for, 4 or 8 years. Yep. You show up and it's boom, let me show you all this bad stuff.
And you can do all that you want in terms of forming and protecting your kids, but you send an 18-year-old young man into that environment.
Oh, they're going to hog wild, man.
Dude, they're not ready for it.
Yeah.
They're not ready for it. And it's just not a fair fight. And so we think that there is this tremendous, since I started pushing across the states in 2021, we've had 125 sites start. We'll be at 200 by the end of the year. In the homeschool and classical school conventions that I've spoken at, so I've spoken at 16 this year since February. That's produced 197 counties that have requested a hall across North America. And so there's this latent localism. I think COVID kind of kicked it off a little bit.
Absolutely.
People were like, wait a minute, like I don't have to live in a crazy urban environment, and actually I can kind of work from a remote. I actually like my life. Like this is a great community.
Right.
I can raise my kids. So a lot of that got kicked off. In the education space, that opened some doors because everybody moved online. Like everybody moved off campus. And so suddenly we're able to go into these communities and say, okay, what if we kept doing that, but turned our affections back to our community? What if we're training our people and our kids to be the next sheriff, to be the next preacher, to be the next electrician, for the good of our place? And that, I don't know what happened spiritually. I don't know if it's, a combination of COVID and Trump and all this other kind of stuff. I don't know all the different social dynamics. But like I said, we've got 197 calls so far this year. Can you come and can you build in our community?
Well, I think I can tell you what, one of the big influences there, and I'll give you a Sheridan example. So COVID hits, and a whole bunch of parents figure out what their kids are being taught, and most of it's really, really bad stuff.
Yeah, right.
And there were meetings that I went to, that I spoke at, and I think at one point I heard that over 300 kids were pulled out of the public school and went, to straight homeschool. Well, in Wyoming, this year we're spending $22,000 and change per student. Well, if you do the math, 22 grand times 300, that's a big amount of money.
Number.
And, they're just straight out of the school budget. And, but like you say, they finish their senior year, and then what happens? So I want to go to Nick. I want to go to Kyle. Nick's flying all over the world, setting these things up. What's your role in this?
So you get to know Nick, he ruins your life because you realize you could be doing other things.
Like fishing.
Like fishing. So I have homeschooled, my wife and I have homeschooled our kids almost all the way through. 6 of our 7 kids who have graduated from homeschool have gone to the University of Wyoming because we didn't know a way to get them the credentials to have a white-collar trade school so they could have the kind of career they were hoping to. We knew how, if they wanted to be a tradesman, we knew how to find that. But white-collar trade school, we couldn't find credentialing outside of the university system, so they've all gone to the university. What Nick opened my eyes to is Nick found a way to take universities across the country, make them a resource for us available online. But what I'm trying to do is put a call out across Wyoming for professionals, for seasoned people in the trades. It doesn't matter if you're 40 to 70 and you would be willing to walk with a student as they are going through and learning your area of expertise. We would love to talk to you about becoming a tutor and inviting them into what you've seen in your community. They would be a student in your community that wants to study what you're doing. And we want you to meet with them once a week for at least an hour and talk about what they're learning in their online classes, what they're learning in their academics, and how you've applied that in your career. So we want to take education from simply a knowledge dump to a wisdom and applicability dump and transfer to bring discipleship back into this, where it is a person with experience walking with youngsters and a whole cohort, not just one-on-one. So I'm hoping to find people in this state who want to elevate their kids' experience from, we left and went to Laramie, we tried to find a way to come home, but gosh, I couldn't find my perfect fit in Cody, so I had to leave the state and go somewhere else. And now we spend the next 10 to 20 years trying to find a way to get back to Cody where you were raised. What we think Nick has found is a hack to get Cody students the credentialing they need and that they're looking for with a university level education, but finding local mentors who will open up their businesses, their experience, their line of work, and let them come in and see under the hood, maybe with internships, but definitely with mentoring. And so I'm trying to help facilitate these in any way we can, because I think this is going to allow more Wyoming people to get the high level credentials they need, but then to know what's going on in their own community so they can fit into it quickly and possibly never have to leave. One thing that motivates me is when I send my kids to the University of Wyoming, we spend more on food and lodging than we do on books, tuition, fees. Well,
yes.
You already have a home. You can stay in your home.
You
with
don't
your
need
parents.
to spend that.
You don't need to spend that money. So you could get a full degree in virtually anything that you want to get a degree in for $25,000, all in, said and done, over the 4 years in this method. And we will find mentors for you in your community that do similar things to what you want to do and get you to see how that's operating in your town over these 4 years. So it'll be, I mean, if you take Leadership Wyoming or Leadership Casper, we're almost merging that with your college education with a devout practitioner in your area. So if you're an accountant, you're studying accounting, we're gonna put you with other accountants that can bring you into their firm, show you what they're dealing with, show you what their issues are, talk about how the local businesses that they're serving are struggling with this and that. So a student who graduates from a Christian hall with an accounting degree will know their local community struggles with accounting much better than someone that goes to Laramie. So when I saw what Nick had done and realized how it could apply in our state and how every parent I know says, I want my child to get an education, but I want them to have an opportunity here. I think this could bring that along, and it avoids all this Marxist pagan stuff. This is a Christian organization. In order to be a mentor, you must be a Christian. We're only looking for Christian mentors. And so you'll also just naturally be talking about what's your church life here? What's your family life here? When you put older people with youngsters, they inevitably talk about, in my marriage, this and this.
Sure.
And so there'll be mentoring that is life skills and applicable where they live, and save money, and hopefully rejuvenate Wyoming and begin to harvest the incredible talent we have in our young people without sending them out of state for their 10 to 20 years when they try really hard to find a way back in later. And then they're trying to figure out their community again because they've been gone for 20 years.
I think it usually sounds like, when I was your age, boy.
No, that's what it sounds like coming from you.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation with Nick and Kyle. Back in a minute.
We are.
Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com. You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program. It's Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by the man upstairs. Welcome back to the program. I'm joined by Nick Ellis and Kyle True and of Christian Hall's fascinating concept. And, listening to you guys talk, I don't see it as, and Kyle, you mentioned this as that Nick has found a hack. I don't see it that way. Okay. Because when you talk about any of the, classical writers, composers, librarians of our past, typically there's a line in there that so-and-so mentored under this person, or they apprenticed for this person.
That's right.
And, in our past, if you wanted to learn music, well, even Beethoven, Beethoven wasn't the amazing musician from the very beginning. I mean, he's very talented, but he too went and studied under somebody. Mm-hmm. And, in our very distant past, if you wanted to learn a trade or whatever, you picked whatever it is that you wanted to study, and then you went and asked somebody for an apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to me that is a foreign concept now, that you could find somebody in the field of endeavor that you want to study, and that you would just go learn from them. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, my producer, Agent 29 here, Ken, I want to be very careful that your head can fit out the door. So I'll be very careful about what I'm going to say here. But Ken is a brilliant carpenter. You can look in that other room and he can show you a violin that he made. Okay, so if somebody wanted to get into, carpentry, right, why should they not go study under Ken? I mean, they would come out a much more grouchy person, but but that's the idea, right?
Right.
So
that is the idea. Actually.
So we go find experts in that field, and we just pair them with students. Yep. How does that work?
Well, and you're absolutely right. Historically, this is our founding fathers would look at us and say,
"You guys are dumb,"
and they would look at us and be like, "Duh."
Yeah.
Well, of course. This is just normal stuff. I mean, from like the Greek Forum to the synagogue to the Oxford Academy to Harvard, like this model has historically been the default.
Right.
Just standard. It's apprenticeship and it's studying under a master, right? And so we should not be like back-footed on this. We should say this has always worked. In fact, the stuff that hasn't worked is like the last 120 years.
Everything else that we've been doing.
That's right. So absolutely right. We should not expect that the modernist approach is the default approach, because it's what's created a ton of problems.
I think of, and maybe that's why they call it the Oxford model, that C.S. Lewis and the way that they did it.
That's right.
There, yeah.
That's right. So C.S. Lewis, J.R. Tolkien, all these guys, C.S. Lewis is at Magdalen College. He's doing tutorials all day. You come and you study with C.S. Lewis.
Right.
I was there for 5 years. I never attended a lecture.
Not one.
I was at the Eagle and Child pub with my supervisor, Marcus Bachmuel, reading papers, discussing, debating, preparing for exams. It is a human formation. And I think what's happened is we forgot how to actually be human. And so all we're doing is pivoting back into a human concept. We were actually talking about on the way up here about our founding fathers. We should actually probably talk more about our founding grandfathers.
Yes.
Because, what in the world would prepare a 23-year-old James Madison to go do what he did?
Nothing.
It was his grandparents and fathers that sent them and said, You are going on our behalf to go and create a self-governing country. So we need to go back and we need to read back from Washington and Jefferson and Madison and those guys and say, what was the ecosystem of formation and self-governance that created those people, these young men capable of restructuring a nation? Well, guess what? They're all tutored.
Yes.
They're all apprenticed. They're all tutored to a T. Every single one of them is working and apprenticing underneath a lawyer or a pastor or a tradesman or a farmer. And as they're being trained in those areas, they're also reading the great texts. They're reading through, the history of self-governance. This is what formed our nation. And so if you try to go back and replicate if like we were saying, if we wanted to be a Jefferson, too late. Too late for us. But if we actually said, but maybe our role is to be the grandfather of the father of a Madison or Jefferson or Washington, now we can actually change the country. So this should not be surprising. This is not like some revolutionary concept. It's revolutionary in a context that has forgotten how to form great men to form great countries.
And I think the other piece of it too is, all colleges and universities, when you fill out the application, there's a section that says, what did you do outside of school? And it's become kind of performative.
Yes.
But the original intent of it is, so what did you do in your community? Were you active in your church? Did you help little children, in your off hours? But what did you do to help your community?
Yeah.
And the idea being that, okay, to be a candidate at our institution, we have to know that there's an impetus for public service.
Yeah.
Because if you look at our history, go back to any of the small little, towns in the 1700s, 1800s, the idea is just what you mentioned earlier, is that you go study under somebody and you learn a craft, and then you come back. And that's how you ended up with really incredible people living in a really, really small town. That's because they went somewhere else and then they said, okay, now we're going to go home and we'll be the lawyer or the surgeon or the librarian.
That's
or
right.
whatever.
And that's how you end up with, local doctors having statues made for them.
Yes.
Because actually, they've literally given birth to all of the kids in this town.
Right.
Like all of them. And they have come back, they've studied, they've come back to their community and they've said, I'm going to serve this place. Now that has been completely destroyed because it's hard to put out a shingle as a self practicing doctor. You have to go work for a corporate site. You're gonna you're gonna come out with $350,000 to $400,000 of debt, which means you don't have the economic resources to go back to your hometown. So right from the get-go, my brother, ER doctor, he went out of state, University of Colorado. He's brilliant, scored incredibly well. So everybody started to say, oh, you need to go to this best law. You need to go to the best out-of-state school. Did great there. Oh, you need to go to New York to do your residency. So I went to St. Luke's. So he graduated, and he just signed the promissory notes, right? Signed the promissory notes, doesn't keep track of what's going on. He graduates with $920,000 worth of debt.
$1 million worth of debt.
As an ER doc, as an hourly worker.
Holy crap.
He'll never get out.
No. Ever.
He'll never get out. And so suddenly you realize that you've worked yourself into, because of prestige or all the kind of cultural trappings that say, oh, this is honorable, because this is an honor and shame dynamic. It's like, oh, it's honorable to do this, but it would be shameful to go to, Kentucky State and knock off as cheap of a program as you can, so you can actually go back and get married and have a family and be a part of your small town. That's a shameful outcome.
I don't think so at all.
And so now we've upturned the whole honor-shame paradigm. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to say it is honorable to work for the good of your community and your people and your place. Those are rightly ordered affections. And if you do that well, now you can bless your state, your country, your world. But you go to any university, their marketing, it's all the same. It's like, go change your world.
Yes.
Change your world. Change your world.
World needs more cowboys.
Yeah, make your bed first, though.
Yeah.
And we want to say, build your family, serve your community, and from there, God can ripple out incredible blessings if you have a solid bench. Yep. Well, we've lost our bench. We've lost our grassroots.
So how does somebody get involved in this? So you're an expert in your field. Maybe you're a lawyer.
Yeah.
And you got a kid that wants to learn the law. So how does one go about doing that with your program?
So I'm gonna take Texas because when I started this program, I said I'll never do medical and I'll never do law.
Okay.
Because those are two guilds that are highly, highly self-protected because they don't really want people to come into the guild. And then a year and a half ago, I had one of the Supreme Court justices in Texas call me and say, hey, have you ever thought about doing local hometown apprenticeships to train local lawyers? I was like, not really. Not a lawyer.
Don't want to.
Nope. And he said, well, we have a major crisis in Texas because currently you've got to go to an ABA, American Bar Association Law School. The prices are outrageous, and you're going to have to end up in Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, or Houston at a large firm to even pay it off. Well, as a result, we don't have any hometown lawyers anymore. And the old story of coming into your community, reading for the bar, reading for the law, taking the bar, and taking over your father-in-law's law practice, that's a dead story.
Yes.
That can't happen anymore. Just the structures are broken. He said, well, for us, it's a pretty significant justice issue because we really need conservative local lawyers that love their hometowns. They're all gone.
It's not just Texas.
And I said, well, good luck, because you're never going to get the state legislature to allow us to move away from the ABA.
That was going to be my next question.
And I said, well, you clearly know nothing about the law. I was like, you're right. I know nothing about the law. So why am I wrong? And he said, it's pretty simple. We need a majority of our state Supreme Court justices to vote. So we need 5 votes to change licensure.
Okay.
I said, really? This isn't like
That's
a
it?
legislative political process? He's like, no, this is we get to set the rules. And 35 years ago in Texas, everybody read for the bar. And we, in our great wisdom, decided that everybody should go to an ABA law school because all of our guild members said, oh, we should set up a law school.
Who are all probably making money off the law school.
They're all making money off the law school. And he said, we made a terrible mistake. Now we're trying to fix it. But the problem is all of those apprenticeship programs are all gone. So the structure's changed. And I said, well, tell you what, if you figure out how to sever from the ABA and you're interested in doing this, you call me. He said, give me a year. So 6 months ago, my phone rang. And he said, hey, pull up SCOTUS blog. And he said, Texas Supreme Court votes to decouple from the ABA.
Cool.
I was like, what? He's like, we did our part. Are you ready? I was like, I am not ready. I'm not even close to ready. What do we do? And he said, well, I think there's probably 2 options. Both of them require local lawyers to mentor these kids. He said, we started to look back through what did the old apprenticeships require. One of the funniest things that I saw is the old apprenticeships required you to have a minimum number of dinners with your lawmaster.
Okay.
Because it's really about forming a virtuous relationship with somebody. It's not just about like taking the exam. You're trying to create virtuous lawyers, and so that they actually have requirements in. Yeah, that's right. Requirements in there for the number of dinners that you had with your apprentice master. And so we started to go back, and now we're going to have 2 programs in Texas. One of which is, if you want your JD, we've got Houston Christian University, we've got West Texas A&M, we've got a couple of programs. You can study in a law study program, get your degree as you're staying in your community and apprenticing in a law firm. And the other option is, if you don't want the degree, the prestige of the degree, but you want barbery, you basically want to take the bar and practice, then take 5 years, work at the local law firm, get competent, and then take the bar and start practicing. None of this is revolutionary.
No.
This is all standard stuff. This is a 200, 300, going back to England, 500-year process of how you train a lawyer. We just centralized it all into the law school. So in the state of Wyoming, what would be interesting is to say, what would that look like?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because there was a bill in the legislature. I don't think it passed, but maybe it was last year. But anyway, the problem that they're trying to solve is we don't have any small town lawyers.
Right.
And the bill was to pay lawyers to move to small towns. Yeah. And as it turned out, it would only be like, I can't remember the exact number, but like 10 positions in the entire state.
Right.
But the solution was not to do apprenticeships, not to say, hey, maybe there's some kid, a local kid that wants to, pull an Abraham Lincoln and study the law.
That's right.
It was to, let's run it all from the state.
We'll incentivize it through the state.
Yeah,
well, that's wrong. Like, that's not a long-term solution. You have to look at structural solutions that create long-term incentives so that some kid coming out of high school is like, I love the law. Like, I love originalism. I love constitutionalism. And I love my town. And I want to see just structures built in my community. The worst thing that I could do is send that kid to University of Berkeley to go study political science.
Oh, yeah, he'd be toast.
It's the worst thing that I could do. So what I'm looking for is conservative lawyers that love their town that are like, I would love to, frankly, disciple somebody. And our churches are problematic because our churches think discipleship is, would you run a Bible study on a Wednesday night?
Yeah.
I'm all about Bible studies on Wednesday nights, but asking a lawyer or a tradesman or a businessman, say, hey, use the best of what you have, but we want you to run the Bible study. And that's discipleship. Actually, discipleship is just the forming of the younger. And I'll tell you what's great about this is the person that benefits the most is actually the mentor.
Yeah.
It is a life-giving, soul-forming act to actually engage in mentorship and discipleship, and watch the next generation, come along. So you asked, how do you get involved? We would say, if you are interested in forming the next generation of people, we would love to match you up with students. We can take care of the degree granting authority. We can do the credentialing. We don't actually even really believe in the degrees.
Just a piece of paper.
But the market still does. And so I said, fine. We'll go to, we've got 12 different universities. Which one is the best fit? Do we need to bring on another one? Do we need to bring on a Wyoming university? Awesome. Those are frankly vendors for us. And that's basically how we framed it. You're a vendor, provide a good service. We'll provide you as many students as you can handle.
Right.
You screw us,
we're done.
We will fire you and find another vendor. But that enables us to work with really high quality universities that actually are aligned. They just don't know how to do this.
Right.
And so they've said to us, if you can go do the formational stuff, if you can go do the community-based work, we'll be your accreditor, we'll be your degree granting authority. So that's the kind of relationships that we're looking to build across the state.
And that's why I call it a hack, because I couldn't figure out a way as a homeschool dad to get my kids able to sit for the professional engineer exam unless I send them to an ABET accredited engineering school and they get that credential. The credentialing is a way to hold back people from coming with competence and knowledge. We said, no, you have to bring credentials, not competence and knowledge. So Nick found a way. Christian Halls can get your child a credentialed degree from Colorado Christian, from Southeast University, from a variety of universities, and they will have a diploma from that university. But what we're hoping to do is find local mentors who will pour more into that student and give more wisdom and understanding to that student than the university possibly could, but they still have the credentials so that they can sit for the CPA exam, so they can become a nurse. Our society still demands those credentials, and I'm thrilled that we have that we've hacked into the system to not send our kids away for 4 years and lose contact with them, but to maintain discipleship with them and get the credentials.
It was quite a while ago, but we had a local attorney in here, and I don't even remember the subject we were talking about. But when I asked him, so what is your area of expertise? Are you a litigator? Are you a defense attorney? And he says, I'm a small town lawyer. I got to do a little bit of everything.
Yep.
But that's kind of the point.
Yep.
That in small towns,
yep.
it is often it's almost always, not often, it's almost always the punishment, or the process is the punishment, and that it costs so much to hire a lawyer.
That's right.
And one of those reasons is there are so few of them.
Yep. That's right.
Because
and I didn't realize that until I started to move into the legal space. I'm thinking Supreme Court. I'm thinking, that kind of stuff. Actually, it's DAs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want to talk about some of the most powerful positions in this state. I mean, the DAs, and if you can get kids to, know the law and love their town and move into, the prosecutorial or the, district attorney office. But actually, even that's pretty kind of highbrow. A lot of this is like real estate law.
Sure.
Brokerage law.
Contracts.
All contract law. This is the kind of stuff that in a law-bound society, you actually need people who know the law. And in all of these different little areas, family law, family practice, all this other kind of stuff. And so that's where it's not as sexy. It's not as like, oh, we're a Blackstone fellow who's preparing to, take a run as a clerk for the Supreme Court. That's what everybody wants to talk about. But that's not actually what runs this country at the county level.
See, and I don't know if I agree with you, because how many movies do we have of, just the local lawyer that takes a big case that everybody thinks is unwinnable. Mm-hmm. Of course, this guy is guilty of sin, and the small town lawyer figures out a way to get him off, or the reverse, that you're the kid that doesn't like criminals and you want to put them in the slammer. Well, one of the problems in Wyoming, and this is a big problem right here, is that we don't have enough prosecutors. Like our county attorney literally has to go find prosecutors from elsewhere to prosecute the criminals here, which
That's right.
The problem with that is, one, it costs a heck of a lot of money, but it's also that your prosecutor doesn't know the people that he or she is dealing with. So when they have a generally good person that screwed up, maybe they had too much fun on a Friday night and did some things that they shouldn't. Well, if your prosecutor isn't from here, you don't know the people, you don't know that, hey, maybe this is a good kid that just screwed up and we probably shouldn't throw him in the slammer. Well, you lose that discretion because you don't know your community.
Yep, that's right.
And one of the things I like about this is you have people that are invested in their community.
Yep.
That they want to be the lawyer or the doctor.
That's right.
The
And you
nurse.
start to look at these different sectors. I had never thought about this in terms of like law enforcement until a local sheriff in Texas came to me and just said, "Do you have degrees in criminal justice?" I said, "Well, yeah, I've got a bunch of degrees in criminal justice. I just don't know what to do with it because I'm not a cop."
Right.
I said, "What would you do with it?" And he said, "Oh my goodness, young men, small town Texas, they're coming out of high school, they want to play football or they want to be a cop. And they're probably not going to end up playing football."
Right.
And so our current model is we send them to Austin. First mistake.
Yes.
They go to DPS, Department of Public Safety, get broken in their vision of justice, end up working at Dallas, the police department, and then I end up having to re-import a mercenary cop into my town that actually hates our town.
Yeah.
And so instead of that, could I have a small training department that offers them a associate's or a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and not only can we get them trained in like historic justice, but we can mentor them and disciple them, and maybe they'll end up not divorced and alcoholic by the time they're 45, because that is the trajectory of a lot of these young men. So it's equal parts credentialing, but it's also discipleship, because you want these young men to be healthy.
Sure.
And so that's what other way do we have that but human on human local formation, because the centralized training cattle stalls that we use are not producing high quality virtuous people.
Exactly what I wanted to highlight. Before you got here in the first hour, we were talking about why character matters in a politician. Well, why does it matter that you are faithful to your wife when you go and serve? Because people of character matter, and America won't work without people of character. And I love that is an essential core of what you guys are putting together. Is you're not just going to develop somebody who has the mental capacity or the certificate to hang on the wall, but somebody with character that can actually make a difference. And that is what we have been lacking over the last 100 to 120 years since the industrial age, and we abandoned, like we said earlier, it used to be if you wanted to make a living, you figured out what you wanted to do, you went and found somebody that was successful, and you trained under them, and eventually you got to hang your own shingle.
That's right. That's right.
And we need to be training kids not only in the details of their profession, but another thing that you need to come out with in life is some grit. I've never met anyone that's not had the wind against them at a significant point in their career, and they had to say, I'm going to dig down, I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to move forward. There's a young lady whose name I will not mention who has thought about a marketing degree, maybe a business degree, maybe would like to own a coffee shop, maybe would like to be a realtor. So thinking in business terms, spent time at Casper College, and in the classes that you have to take that are just the generic ed classes, she said they were pushing Marxism so hard.
Yeah.
And she used the word Marxism, anti-family, anti-Western civilization, that she just got discouraged from pursuing higher education at all. And I think this is the time where we should be imbuing kids with the truth, which is God actually loves you. He's created you to be in a family structure, both as a daughter in this gal's perspective, sister, maybe someday wife. And there will be challenges, but it is worth the battle to go out there and get it. And there is someone with you and for you and behind you, the Lord. There is a spirit that will strengthen you. These are the kinds of things they need to be reminded and taught, because it's true. Now, there's also the details of your profession,
right?
And you should be taught that as well. And we have a system that tries to gut any hope and any optimism, and everyone comes out pessimistic from these educational systems. We need to eliminate that. That's not true. If it were true, I would defend it. It's not true. The truth is, it's worth fighting hard and staking your claim, staking your ground, and building something. It's worth it.
Well, I'll give you a great example. I don't mean to cut you off, but during COVID, I decided, well, maybe I got nothing else to do. I'll go finish my history degree. So I went here to Sheridan College. And the irony is, the two history classes that I had to take, both of the professors said, well, David, you could teach this class. And I was like, well, I know, but apparently I have to have, this class. But I was also required to take 2 Spanish courses. I don't know why I need to learn how to speak Spanish to know history. I don't get it. Well, one of the courses, the teacher, he brought in a guy who was very enamored with Castro. And I'm in the class, and I'm 40 years old, and I'm in there with a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old kids. And this professor is telling the class how fantastic Cuba is, and how great of a leader Fidel Castro was. And I took it for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. And finally, I just could not take it anymore. And I said, stop. Let's talk about Fidel Castro. Let's talk about Marxism. And, everybody in the class is like, oh my God, he's arguing with the guest speaker. And I was shocked at how much rope that professor or teacher, I don't even know if he was a professor, but teacher gave this guy. And I mean, it was straight up Marxism for 10 minutes. And had I not been sitting in there, those kids would have heard an entire lecture about Marxism that was, and
it
entirely
happens
destructive. Everywhere.
Every single day, every single classroom, every single community. And we have no idea. Like we haven't been in the universities for, 20 years, 15 years, whatever. And some of us have a lot of nostalgia, A&M, Texas A&M, University of Nebraska, born in Lincoln, go Big Red.
Right.
You've got all of this kind of emotional baggage for these institutions. And we don't actually know what's going on in the classroom.
No.
Nobody actually sees the product. In fact, they want to hide the product. Like, you can't actually go in and audit these things. You can't actually check what's going on in these classrooms. And so my response is, this is your state. It is your community. It is your family. They're your people. What does it look like to build an educational self-governing system that says, what is the trajectory in the future of our state? Now, you guys know your state. I don't know your state. So to say, we want to be in 30 years, we want to be here. And work backwards and say, if we're going to be at this place in 30 years, who are the people that we need to be training for? I got a call last month. I went up to Alberta. The Premier's office invited me in. They're going through this whole question of, do they split off from Canada? And her number one question to me is, can we set a province-wide teacher college to train our local teachers? Because our current Alberta Teachers Association is a Marxist nightmare.
Yeah, their favorite color is red.
And so it's like, I need a teacher college to train our teachers. I need a civic program in every one of our counties. What do they call their counties in Alberta, to train our local civic leaders? And I need a medical program, because right now the Canadian educational system is so 10%. What I heard this last year, 10% of all deaths were assisted suicide. And so we're killing our youth. 10%.
10%.
We're killing our young at abortion, and then we're killing our elders at the tail end. And she said the problem is that our medical school is now teaching and inculcating a complete lack of love for life. I need a medical program, because if we're actually going to build a virtuous society of people who actually love life, our doctors and our doctors should be the ones that value life. And so that's where we basically just set out a trajectory and said, for this province, for this state, for this community, where do we want to end up? Let's train the people that are going to actually be the future of our community. And if the service provider, the university, the UW or whatever, is not doing the job, and we've lost the ability to hold that service provider accountable, we'll go create our own.
Yep, we got to do it ourselves.
We'll go create our own. And it's not even that hard. What's hard is getting the older generation to actually buck up and say, this is actually my responsibility. I'm going to train the next lawyer. I'm going to train the next doctor. I'm going to train the next preacher. So that's the kind of self-governing system that really America was built on. America was built on the idea that virtuous people could self-govern. If we're not willing as virtuous people to self-govern, then we get the system that we've got.
We deserve the system.
We deserve the system.
All right, well, guys, I appreciate your time sitting in here. If my listeners, viewers want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Go to our website, Christian Halls, ChristianHalls, christianhalls.org. Check out the website, and we'd love to talk to you. There's a form there on I'm interested. Give me a call. Tell us you're from Wyoming, and we'll put you in contact with Kyle.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. Well, that'll do it for today's installment of the broadcast. Tomorrow, we're going to have Nathan Winters, and we're going to talk about his little forum down in Cheyenne. So we'll do that tomorrow. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy.